Welcome back to This Day. Joining me now from O'Connor Mortuary is Becky Lamaka, and she is the Director of Grief Support and Education. So Becky, so nice to see you, and my first time to meet you. I understand you've been coming on for like 20 years.
Been coming on for a while, yes.
That's crazy.
I always enjoy getting to be here and coming on the show. Great information always.
Yeah. Well, and grief is hard, and you must be a very compassionate person in the industry that you're in, and so. But for you, what's the joy? What's the silver lining? What's the thing that you get out of this position?
Yeah, I was just having this conversation with somebody the other day, and she said it must be so hard what you do, and I said, it is definitely hard. There are hard aspects to what I do, to what our team does, but there is this sense of meaning when we can walk alongside somebody during their darkest time, and really hold that space for them, because we know that they need that. We know somebody needs to hold that space and be present and allow them to tell their story as they're grieving. So knowing that we can do that, and see that people can come through grief and grow through grief and move forward in their grief really is what gives us the satisfaction that's why we're here.
It's definitely helping people. Even though it's such a hard time, it's definitely helping people. And I know for me, the times that I've needed that support, it is so comforting when somebody can direct you on what needs to be done and just help you. Because at a lot of times you're just like, I don't even know what to do.
Yeah.
Like, what do I do?
I always say in grief, especially early on, we've lost our north, right? We've lost our north, and so our role is help people find their north again.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so today we're going to discuss grief and pet loss. So, why is it so hard to lose a pet?
Well, those of us who have had animals in our lives, they are part of our family. And sometimes easier than our children, right? Because they are there greeting us when we come home and they don't talk back. And, they're such a presence. They're such a part of our lives. They are truly a part of our family. And so when we have a pet who dies, it devastates us just like if we, had a person die.
Yeah. And is it harder, do you think, like for seniors? Are they facing like a little bit different challenges than just anybody else who's losing a pet?
I think so. Sometimes our pets, we're closest to our pets. As we're older, sometimes that is our companion, right? Versus maybe our spouse has already died, maybe children aren't as close. So that is really our daily companion. I think one of the things that makes pet loss so difficult is something that we call disenfranchised grief. And really what that means is society is telling us we shouldn't be grieving. We should, why are you, what? It was just. And so we have these minimizers that our, even sometimes well-meaning friends and family use. They minimize our grief. Well, and I say a minimizer is anything that starts with at least. Well, at least, you had your cat for 15 years. Well, at least, why don't you just go get another one? Oh, it was just a dog. Why, it's been a month. Why aren't you over this yet? So then we start to feel this guilt, like, oh my gosh, maybe I shouldn't be grieving this. So this disenfranchisement that what I'm feeling shouldn't be. So that complicates and that causes us even more emotional distress.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like if you're constantly telling yourself I shouldn't feel this way, then you're not going to actually be dealing with how you feel to move past it.
And the one thing we know about grief is there's no right or wrong way to grieve. I was just talking with someone who had a person die. Her father died, and she said, I guess my brother is grieving the right way. He's really upset. He's crying, and she said, I'm still in shock. And she said, I guess I'm doing it wrong. And I said, there's no right or wrong way. I said, you're in action mode, you're in go mode. You're the one who has been responsible for calling the family and notifying. And so we talked a little bit about what that looks like. And I think the same when we experience the loss of a pet, we want to share. We want somebody to console us and offer condolences, but sometimes we're a little afraid to mention it because of these minimizers.
That makes so much sense. And do people, when it's a loss of a pet, would you expect that people are going to go through the same, like, isn't the 7 stages of grief?
Well, we really don't see grief in stages anymore. Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, many decades ago, kind of looked at the dying as in these stages, and it got transformed into these stages of grief. And really, over the past few decades, we see grief as much more fluid, and the reason for that is people do experience those things, but they don't necessarily experience them in those stepping stones and in that particular order. And we don't really want to approach people like that, because what happens is if they think they need to grieve in that order or in these stages, once again, they're feeling like, oh my gosh, I've failed, I've done it wrong, because I'm angry, but I haven't been through bargaining, you know what I mean? So they're thinking, so you feel all of those things, absolutely. And even non-death losses, when we're losing our eyesight, maybe when we can't drive anymore. So we have these non-death losses that we grieve, and yes, we grieve these things in the very same way as if it were a person who had died.
Wow, so interesting. And so when it's a pet, is there a best way to handle it?
I think the best way is the best way for you. So what may be the best way for you may be very different than the best way for me. But one thing I do say to people is, mark the death, feel the feelings, allow yourself to feel this grief without any judgment attached to it. Right?
Yeah.
If you're feeling really lethargic, if you're feeling really angry, if you're having a really tearful day, rather than beating yourself up and saying, oh my gosh, what's wrong with you? Get over it. Allow yourself that moment. Now, maybe it's going to be 20 or 30 minutes, and then you're going to move on. You're going to get off to one of the clubhouses. You're going to get into an activity. I say surround yourself by people, right? We're not meant to go it alone in our grief. So surround yourself with people who are going to support you. And then find ways that are meaningful for you to ritualize that death. A lot of people now, we've really advanced with pet cremation, where we actually even have like pet hospices. People will come to your house and be with you as your animal is dying. We can have memorabilia that is made. We can bring the cremated remains home to us. We have little, these pet hospitals have little urns for cats and dogs. So that might not be for you, but find ways that you can ritualize. Is it taking the collar and hanging it up in some special place?
Yeah. Oh, those are all some really good ideas, things I didn't even know about. How that's incredible didn't know there was pet hospice too. Because many animals get so old, and then they're on their last days. But yeah, so that's such a great thing. And so how do you know if the grief you're experiencing, if it is a lot, or how do you know if it's too much, or it's been going on too long, or that you're not getting over it, and or that you just need maybe a little extra help?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, how I talk with people is, one of the things we know about grief is it never truly ends, right? The edges soften over time, but when we least expect it, it can rear its ugly head again. It can be months, and a certain situation will happen, or maybe I had this happen with me when our dog died. It had been 8 months since our dog had died, and I went to the refrigerator. I was cooking something that I know she always loved, the scraps, and I turned around to give her a scrap, and I realized, wait a minute, she's not here anymore, and the tears started flowing. So again, give yourself that grace that you could feel fine for a few months, and then all of a sudden one little thing triggers, or you're walking into the house for the first time after you've been away, and you're used to seeing your animal there, and your animal isn't there. I would say I would be concerned if people, after a certain point, after a few months, are not getting back into regular activities again. So if you're not going to the clubhouse, if you're not joining the exercise group that you did, if you're not going to these meetings for this club that you were a part of, I would be concerned about that.
Okay. Well, great. Well, thank you so much for being here today and educating us about this.
Of course.
It was nice to meet
Thank you.
If you would like to contact O'Connor Mortuary, you can give them a call at 949-581-4300 or go online to o'connormortuary.com. Stay with us. We'll have more of this day right after this.